So it's funny too because I was like, so you're I usually start my show by like saying, oh, like welcome so and so, and then I just quickly realized I started the record button. I was like, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Oh, yeah, I actually get that a lot. It's Maschino.
Maschino.
Like
So you do pronounce the S.
Yeah, machine and then the O.
Yeah, that's a Minnesota name.
Yep, I've definitely heard multiple iterations of the last name over the years.
Dude, I haven't done like a legit like episode with like another guy, like an interview, since I want to say like November.
Jeez,
Crazy.
Yeah, this is my first. So
you should feel honored. Well, I feel honored. This is your first podcast?
Yeah, so last night, a couple of my buddies actually texted me up. They're like, hey, do you want to start a podcast with us?
Let's go. Yeah.
And I was like, I might as well. I mean, I got all this time since I'm working from home and stuff, so right, I think it'd be pretty dope.
Do you like talking? Like, do you just, I mean, because like for me, honestly, and this is no joke, the reason why I started a podcast was like, I was like, I need an outlet. Like, I need to talk.
Yeah.
I don't know who doesn't want to listen to me, but I need to talk.
Yeah. So we got a good dynamic. So all three of these, me and my two buddies, we were all roommates in college.
Yeah.
And they're like the business. They want to go out. They're like the talkers. They're the ones that bring in the ideas, and I'm kind of the guy that looks at the stats, kind of stuff like that, and can bring an extra level of depth. So we kind of bounce off each other and stuff like that.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, when you do start that up, let me know, man. I'd love to listen to it. But so we're gonna nerd out, man. I'm really excited to have you on. We were talking a little bit before the show started about stuff, and I was like, we could probably just keep going and then totally forget to hit the record button. So I'm glad we got it going. So for those of you guys who are listening, I don't even remember how we got in contact on Twitter, but it was something in regards to pitch metric, data analytical stuff. I'm a nerd. I would say you're a nerd, so totally cool. And like, yeah, we started messaging, and I was like, oh, well, what about this? Like, how what does my fastball look like on this? And who can I compare it to? And what about my cutter? What should I shoot for? Because, like, there's so many things to look at when we're talking about data analytics, especially from the pitcher side. So, first of all, I want to start by, like, asking you, how did you get kind of into this, and what is your background in this, and as far as, like, your baseball and the data analytics?
So I kind of started on this route. So I've played college baseball. I played at the JUCO level and the Division II level, and we were very bare bones. We didn't have much money. So my first like big thing in data analytics was my degree choice. I was a software engineer, so I have all the data analytics background. I have the math statistics background, and I have the computer science background.
Right.
So then I took that and I combined that with my knowledge of baseball, and I kind of made, for my senior project, I made this project that was sort of like a TrackMan. It was a small Doppler radar that records like spin or velocity and like movement profiles.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to create it. It was like the goal behind that was to create like a affordable system for like colleges and for high school.
You legit created that?
Well, I didn't like create the hardware. I went out and I bought the hardware from TI, the same people that make calculators.
Right.
I bought the hardware, and then I wrote the program and the user interface to work with the software or the hardware.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah, it was a
TI 84 guy myself.
Yeah, I still have my TI 83 calculator somewhere sitting around. So. Yeah.
I remember being so pissed in high school, like total side note, but like remember in high school when it was like we had to go out and buy that on our own because of like calculus, because I was a nerd too, so like calculus and all that stuff, and like we had to go out and buy it. It was like $100, dude, for that that graphing calculator.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to your introduction.
Yeah. So I did that, and that kind of led me more and more to like data analytics. So it wasn't a perfect system at all, and now with what is it? Pitch Logic has the baseball and what's the other one you did?
So I did Pitch Logic and I did a Diamond Kinetics product review. I've played around with. There's like a bunch of them nowadays. I didn't realize there was. I know Mizuno has Mizuno. I know they have one. But yeah, there's like talking to those guys about like the software that's in those balls. Like,
it's amazing.
Freaking crazy, man! I'm so intrigued by it though.
And what they're doing is kind of what I wanted to do to bring a cheaper product to the market to hit more people. And I mean, to probably put my system out would be probably cost like $1,000 to get it all set up and run. But what they're doing, like Pitch Logic, is what, $250, and
$250 on Pitch Logic, $100 on Diamond Kinetics
with a $10 subscription. I mean, they're doing what I wanted to do, and they're doing it way better. And
so could you speak to, like, this is a question that I get a lot, and I can't answer it, dude, but could you speak to the legitimacy of, like, doing a Rapsodo unit and the technology that's in that compared to, like, the technology put in a baseball? Like, how that?
So Rapsodo, they're using they're using slow motion capture, so you're going to get you're going to get the best spin direction readings out of there, probably the best velocity, because they have the highest frame rate cameras, and they're able to slow the video down tremendously. Where in a ball, you're kind of hoping I think they use something like a gyroscopic device where it just measures how the ball spins in different directions.
Yeah. Right.
And I mean, Rapsodo is going to give you that perfect number. And so the way I see it, it's kind of like you got your baseballs are a certain level, your Rapsodo is just a certain level higher, and then above that is probably the TrackMan system.
Yeah, TrackMan. Have you done anything with like Flight Scope?
I have not. No.
Did you know that MLB is getting taken over by Hawkeye?
Yep, I'm very excited for that.
So, are you familiar with Hawkeye stuff? Because I reached out to him and I was like, "Hey, man, like I'm a nobody, but can I test your products?"
all I really know about Hawkeye is they're really big in the tennis. Right. I've seen some of the replays they do with tennis where they do like the animations and stuff like that, and they look pretty spot on. So, and I know one of the main like setbacks with TrackMan was reading like lower spin rates and vertical stuff. They struggle with the vertical
TrackMan
kind of stuff.
Did?
So, yeah.
Okay.
So like in my interview with the Twins, I went out and did an interview with the Twins, and part of my application was to clean some data that was brought to you by TrackMan, and all the vertical stuff was pretty noisy. It wasn't like they'd say like a ground ball is like negative 111 feet, and that's sort of impossible. So I don't know. Like TrackMan, I still think TrackMan's king. Rapsodo is quickly making up that ground, and I think Rapsodo is separating itself from like Pitch Logic and stuff like that just because of the quality of data they can provide.
Now, the biggest question out of this whole podcast is it data or data?
I call it singularly, like I call it data, basically. Most of the time it'll be data.
I feel like data is like the smarter way to say it.
Yeah. Data science.
All right, so we're gonna dive into some of these metrics. So again, like I said before we hit the record, but I was like, I kind of want to do like a baseline entry to this. So I'm gonna rattle off some like metrics, and you're kind of give us the definition. Again, this is like super baseline, so I apologize, but we're gonna be talking. All right, so when someone sees total spin for a data metric, what is that?
Total spin is going to be the basically there's two types of spin. You got three types, but two types of spin basically do the same thing. Yeah. So you got your transverse spin, which is the spin that contributes to movement, and then you got your gyroscopic spin, which does not contribute to movement, and that's what your sliders will be consisted of. It's more gyroscopic movement, and your fastballs will be more transverse movement. Mm-hmm. And then if you want to find out, so if you know, Rapsodo will call it true spin. So if you
theoretically, I have total and true. I'm looking at my Rapsodo report right now.
Yep. So transverse true spin, same thing. And if you wanna find gyro spin, it is gyro spin equals the square root of total spin squared minus true spin squared.
Tell me that you just rattled that off the top of your head. All right, so that gives you efficiency, right? So like you look at the total spin and then you look at the true spin, and then that's the way you can try that.
True spin divided by total spin will give you the spin efficiency, and then that ties into gyro, your gyro degree. If you do the arc cosine of your spin efficiency, it'll give you the gyro degree.
I can't wait to like play this podcast back for myself when I'm like looking at my data. All right, so we have spin efficiency. And we'll dive into later on as far as like why these are important and kind of baseline numbers for it. But like, all right, so now we have efficiency. Now what about direction? spin direction?
So
or
spin
for
direction,
you, tilt, right?
Yeah, spin direction, tilt, same kind of deal. The way I see spin direction is the degree. So like a 12 o'clock tilt will, 12 o'clock tilt will probably correlate with a 180 degree spin degree.
Right.
So, and that's going to be basically the direction of the front spin or back spin. So if it's a fastball and it's vertical, it'll be 12 o'clock. If it's a curveball and it's vertical, it'll be 6 o'clock. So basically, fastball backspin will give you basically between, for righties, it'll be between 12 and 3, and lefties, it'll be between 9 and 12.
Yeah.
And then curveballs will be, for righties, between 6 and 9, and for lefties, it'll be 6 and 3.
That's why I reached out to you. Now I remember. Because remember, I was asking about Brooks baseball, and I was saying they give me an axis. And I was like, how do I determine the axis as far as like a Rapsodo that gives a spin direction?
Oh, yeah,
That's what it was.
Driveline actually puts out kind of how to convert that stuff. So it's on their, I just Google, whenever I need help or need direction, I just Google Driveline spin axis, and they have a huge article about spin axis, spin efficiency, all that stuff. I just go find their little piece about spin axis, converting the degree to axis, or degree to tilt, basically.
Yeah, they were definitely ahead of the game in this whole thing.
I'll
link those in the show notes. All right, so we have direction, tilt. Let's jump ahead to the break. So we have horizontal break and vertical break.
So these are known as like your short form movements, and it's going to be movement based on your spin. So the amount of movement you get from your spin. And so like if you have a 2200 or 2600 RPM curveball with very high spin efficiency, I would love to have that. But if you have a super high spin efficient curveball with high spin rate, you're going to get a lot of movement. But if you have like a 2600 RPM curveball but only 70% spin efficiency, you're going to see a drastic change in movement, where it's going to be much less.
So, all right, let me ask you this: is spin rate, because I think spin rate is like the one data metric that is more mainstream, right? So like Statcast puts it up on Baseball Tonight and all that stuff, and I think kids are kind of starting to get a real recognition for it. Is spin rate in and of itself higher spin rate good and lower spin rate bad, or how would you kind of explain that dynamic?
So actually, I was watching Trevor May, his Twitch, and he brought this kind of up. He's like, someone asked, "Is spin rate important?" He said no. He said spin efficiency is where it's at. If you have a high spin efficiency fastball, it's going to play well wherever. And I think that kind of holds true to a point where, like, if you're a Major League Baseball player and you're throwing a 1900 spin rate fastball, it's still probably not going to play well up in the zone. But for the most part, if you have a very spin efficient fastball, it should play well up in the zone.
Right. Yes, because that's like my dynamic, right? It's funny because I remember when I first got introduced to data analytics, it was like, why is my spin rate so low? Like, dang it. Like, I've always wanted to be a guy that pitched up in the zone. And then I remember I threw one bullpen at a dude's facility, and we were all talking about how, like, no, dude, like, your fastball is spinning at, like, 2200 or whatever, but, your efficiency is at 99 to 100. Your axis is like 1230. Your vertical break is high. And so I was like, whoa, man, like, all that plays into it, I guess.
Yeah, like you sent me that one of the pitches you threw, it had like 22 inches of vertical movement.
Right.
And that it was like 2200 spin rate, and I was like, wow, that is extremely high for a 2100, but it's because your spin efficiency is so high.
Could you think of any guys off the top of your head? Because like every time I look at all those like Savants and Brooks Baseball and stuff, like everyone that pitches up in the zone that has high vertical movement, but they also have like high spin rate. I can't find anyone, dude, that kind of like spins at a very mediocre rate, but still. Like even, I think it was Estrada you sent me, right? I think he was kind of the closest.
Yeah, I'm pulling him up right now.
Dude, yeah, I was like, I think he's the closest to the spin
Estrada,
rate.
he's 22 or almost, about 2280. Velocity's 87. So he has a higher Bauer Units, but he gets almost 23 inches of vertical movement.
That's unreal.
Yeah, and his changeup. His changeup is so let's look at his changeup. His changeup is about 2,000 RPMs.
Yeah.
And he gets 18 inches of vertical movement.
Dude. And spin efficiency is 100 on both.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right,
just
Bauer Units, because that's a very interesting one too, which is not talked about all that often. But everyone that I kind of talk to, from the data analytical standpoint, they put a high importance and a high emphasis on Bauer Units. Can you explain it for us?
Yeah. So Bauer Units is going to be your spin rate divided by your velocity. And the theory behind Bauer Units is that if you have anything above a 24, you should pitch high in the zone. If you're between like 20, I think it's like around 22-ish, 23, you're probably going to look at other alternatives and probably not going to be like a four-seam dominant guy.
Mm-hmm.
And like anything below 22, you're probably going to want to consider switching to a two-seamer sinker.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to get more, you're going to get less vertical movement, and you're going to probably play well in the zone a little better down low. But there's always going to be like exceptions to that. So like if you're a super high spin efficiency guy with like a high arm slot, you're going to get a lot of vertical movement. It's kind of just how it is.
So does the high, that's another question that I was actually curious on my own, was like, does the high release point, right? So we were talking a little bit off the show about my release height being around like 6'6", 6'7". So does that play more into your vertical movement profile than, say, like the tilt of the ball, or do they kind of go hand in hand?
It kind of goes hand in hand because you're more over the top throwers. They will they're going to have a more vertical tilt. So close like I think it was like between like 12 and 1 o'clock is going to be your overhand throwers. That's where most of your tilts are going to be.
Yeah.
So that's just going to, by itself, it's just going to create extra vertical movement.
Because I was experimenting with some of the stuff that I was doing, just kind of like on a lighter velo day, about like trying to get my tilt as close as I can to 12, and the closer it got, the increase in vertical movement. Obviously, it was a lower intensity day, so I think my stride length shortened, which increased my release height too.
Yep.
So I think like those two dynamics. So that's a good question though. Is like what kind of is the biggest metric to look at to say increase a specific movement profile, being horizontal or vertical?
The biggest thing to increase it is going to be your spin efficiency. So I mean, just jumping up probably 10 to 10% on your spin efficiency is going to add just so much more life to your pitches. And I mean, once you get that spin efficiency to around 100, then you can kind of start playing with your tilts, your how you release the ball, kind of just working on trying to get that extra horizontal movement if it's like a changeup or something,
right. Or
if you want a more vertical curveball, kind of messing with your arm, the tilt or how you're holding the ball. So I mean, you basically, for every pitch besides the slider and the cutter, you want 100% spin efficiency, or as close as you can get to that.
Okay, so that's a good segue to the next question I had, was because like I was playing with like the two-seamer, right? So we were talking about the two-seamer, and when I was at the regular tilt of a two-seam, or the regular tilt of my four-seam around like 12:30, I wasn't obviously like getting the movement profile that I wanted on it. So for a two-seam fastball, does it play better with like a tilted axis, almost like kind of a changeup?
So yeah, for your two seams, you're going to want probably more of a two-seam sinker. Basically, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And you're going to want a more horizontal tilt. So probably it kind of depends on if you throw a four-seam. So if your four-seam's like a 12:30, you're going to want to have enough separation between the tilts. Yeah. So like you don't end up throwing like a copycat four-seam. Yeah. So So like I looked up, or I helped on a piece for some for zone coverage up here in Minnesota. They read on the Twins, and like Jose Barrios, he throws a pretty he throws, I would say, between a vertical fastball and a three-quarters kind of guy. He's right in that middle ground, but he also throws so his fastball's like a 1 o'clock tilt. His two seam's a 2 o'clock tilt. His changeup's a 2:30 tilt, and then he's got a curveball at an 8:30 tilt, which is
Flurf.
Yeah. I actually did see they're working on like a more 12-6 curveball for him, which will play really well. But all of his pitches are super high spin efficiency, though.
Really? So, because like that's one thing with my two seam is that actually when I throw a good two seam, it's at like 92, 93 efficiency. So even
Yep.
on a two seam, you want 100% efficiency on that. So how would that kind of, as a, because you got like obviously the baseball background too. So like how would I go about training for that? Like even if I tilt my wrist angle a little bit to get like more of a tilted axis, right, or a horizontal axis, like how would I get a higher efficiency on that?
I was working on this today with myself, but honestly, the easiest thing I've seen, get a baseball and draw a circle around the whole baseball. And then you're going to want to.
I have a baseball right here. Am I drawing a circle on the what?
So you see where you're going to want to draw it around the circumference. So like grip it like your two seam.
Easy on the big words there, bud. I didn't go to college.
All right. Grip it like a two seam.
Here's the two seam.
And then so between the two seams, you're just going to draw a straight line all the way around the baseball.
Oh, so like in half.
Yep. Okay. And then if you ever like record your throws or you use a camera, you can look
a high frame rate. Yeah. Dope.
Yep. So then you can look. Is it spinning around the axis, or is it kind of wobbling? And if it's wobbling, we can check and we can see like, okay, what's making this wobble? Is it my wrist angle? How am I releasing the ball? Because a lot of times guys try to pronate the two seam extra when we should let the grip do the work. So sometimes when you pronate the grip that extra, you're going to get more gyro spin, causing the spin efficiency to be lower. And you'll see that. You'll see the ball, that line start to wobble a little bit, and that's how you know we can then back it up. We can see did we pronate the wrist too much,
right,
or did we supinate the wrist too much? And basically, you just want that line straight.
Yeah, because that's what I was doing with my curveball practice. When we talk about my curveball, it's a sensitive subject, RIP. Because, like, obviously, as a high vertical guy, I wanted a freaking high vertical curveball, 12-6, right? Like, it would play well. But, dude, after probably 2 months, and this was every day, I would go out, I had a high frame rate. I got the Sony RX100, freaking the newest one, dude, like 960. I was freaking drawing on balls. I was trying to get it. And for some reason, the way that, like, my arm is, I just couldn't get this, right, with this wrist angle here. Every time I would release it, it was here. So my tilt,
You're never got opening up.
Yeah, I was always at, like, 715. And I couldn't get it, because obviously you want to kind of replicate the opposite side of the spectrum on the four seam, right? So
you want to have that mirror.
Want to have, like, 630. I just couldn't get it, man. It was the most frustrating thing ever.
Throwing a good curveball may be one of the hardest things you can do.
And people make it look so easy.
Like I have Kershaw pulled up right now, and he's a 12 o'clock and a 5:30 guy, so he's not even get the complete 180 degree mirror.
So a lefty is different though, right?
Yeah.
So what would that be for a righty? Would that be like a 1 o'clock for a righty?
Well, he throws a 12 o'clock tilt, so his ball is literally spinning end over end.
So does he have a high vertical guy?
He's a 19.1 inch vertical movement.
But he doesn't pitch up in the zone all that much.
No, I think they're the whole. I could go into the whole Dodgers organization because they love the high spin rate, high spin efficiency guys.
Oh yeah. Well, they were the first ones, kind of them and the Astros, that really took this serious.
Oh yeah. So like Kershaw, when you look kind of at his profile, he's kind of mid zone with his fastball. Yeah. But I mean, if he started throwing up in the zone, he'd be really good because he's got a almost 2,500 spin rate at 90 miles per hour.
He's at 2,500?
2477, so I rounded up.
So what is his curveball spin?
His curveball is 2463, actually.
So what's his vertical on his curveball? How much?
Negative 16.1 inches.
Okay, so pretty decent mirror.
Yep, and so he's end over end 12 o'clock tilt, and then he's got the 530 curveball. So that would equate to a righty, 12 o'clock tilt, 630 curveball.
Okay, perfect segue. So I'm looking. You sent me the Nick Anderson profile. I'm a huge Nick Anderson guy. Can you
old twin?
Yeah. Can you explain? Because this is interesting, right? So like you have a high vertical guy who actually does utilize the up in the zone heater. He's vertical break right at 19.9. But he spins his fastball at 23.20, but he only spins his curveball at 20.94. And can you explain the -2 vertical break that you have? Like what does the -2 kind of mean on the spectrum?
So that means he's only getting 2 inches of downward movement induced from his spin. So you see how like he has a super low spin efficiency curveball, and that's literally he's basically throwing a slider.
So that's I didn't even see that 12.8 spin efficiency on his curveball, but you want 100, right?
What he's doing is he's throwing a slider basically, and how MLB kind of classifies it, they go by what the pitcher calls it. So he's probably told MLB, this is my curveball, and it plays much like a slider.
Dude, yeah, because his is freaking. He's got that late break. He throws the piss out of it too.
Yeah, he's 83 mile per hour curveball. That's a pretty hard curveball. And low spin rate, low efficiency. His total movement's probably around 3 inches of spin induced movement, and it's going to be that late break though, because it's such a low spin efficiency pitch.
Right. All right. So for I'm sure for like everyone listening to this, they're going like, okay, well, how can I apply this all to my development, right? So say a kid goes out and purchases a Diamond Kinetics pitch tracker, which in my comparison videos have been pretty spot on, or a pitch logic, right? So they get this.
Yep.
They see the metrics on a Diamond Kinetics, and all they're trying to do is identify what type of pitcher there are. Are they going to be a 4-seam curveball guy? Are they going to be a 2-seam cutter slider guy? What are the biggest metrics to look at for identifying that, what pitcher you're going to be?
It's definitely going to be your spin rate. And honestly, it comes down to what you feel most comfortable with. If you can, I'll take, for example, Garrett Cole. He's a curveball and slider guy, but he's going to be primarily a fastball slider guy just because it probably just comes more natural to him. And it's hard to teach like a good gyroscopic slider, and if you have it, you're going to be good. And just like if you have a good curveball, you're going to be good throwing that curveball. But you want to look at kind of on the curveball side, you want to look at, is it a mirror of my fastball? Is it a high spin efficiency thing?
Yeah.
And can I throw it for a strike?
Right. I think that's the biggest trump. And this is what I tell kids too, is like we can talk about data analytics all the live long day and essentially like making your arsenal the best that it could be. But I think at the end of the day, the hitter is going to tell you, the hitter is going to tell you what you should do and what you shouldn't do.
Oh yeah. It comes down to, can you throw it for a strike? Can you command that pitch? And I listen to the Driveline podcast too sometimes, and they're like, we can design one of the nastiest pitches in theory, but if you can't throw it for a strike, there's no reason to throw it.
Yeah, I listened to that one too on a road trip. It was fantastic.
Yeah,
because that's another thing a guy told me too. Because I was in the Pittsburgh organization. They preached hard on the 2-seamer sinker dynamic. So I was really trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until after my surgery in 2018 that all of this became more mainstream. And I was like, well, I want to get on it, because I already knew from my days in St. Louis, from the TrackMan data, that I had low spin rate. So that was kind of the talk back then, was like, oh, you should be a 2-seam guy because you'll get a lot of sink because your spin rate's so low. So I was like, okay, so I'll pitch down in the zone. Got it, whatever. And then as I kind of came back from surgery, I like I said, I was introduced to all this vertical movement and stuff like that. And then I was doing a session with a guy that was a big league pitching coach, and he was like, look, dude, you've been training to throw down in the zone your whole life and your whole development stages, and you come back and now you're trying to throw it up in the zone. If you can't, then you need to change something, because if you're trying to throw a fastball up in the zone and it's not there, right? It's middle, center cut, you're going to get hit.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing to take away is okay, well, maybe first and foremost as a kid, identify what your strengths are and what looks good essentially on paper, but then you got to freaking train those patterns too.
Yeah. If you want to be a high in the zone kind of guy, you got to make sure you have above average vertical movement. And you can be a low spin guy, but have above average vertical movement, and you're still going to play well up there. And it comes down to I actually was kind of investigating it. I call it true spin units basically. So it's your true spin divided by your velocity. you have higher true spin, you're going to be able to live higher up in the zone.
Oh, it's an efficiency thing.
Yeah. So it'll be your spin efficiency times your spin rate divided by your velocity. Takes Bauer units one step further, and
right.
it should help us identify. I got a high true spin unit. I should be able to throw higher up in the zone compared to someone who's got average, where it's going to be you're going to see that fastball up in the zone, but then it's going to start sinking a little bit down to the middle of the zone. Mm-hmm. And then if you're you're a sinker guy with low spin, and you try to throw that a sinker up in the middle or up in the zone, right. And it just sinks down into the middle of the zone, and then hitter gets the launch
right.
angle home run he wants.
Right, yeah, no kidding. So do you see a direct correlation with velocity and spin rate?
I've somewhat seen it, and I know Driveline really kind of preaches it. Throw harder, usually you'll see higher spin rate. And I think a good example of that is Garrett Cole. He threw, I think, probably a half a mile per hour harder. Spin rate's going up. I think it's more like of an intent thing too as well.
Sure.
Where you're trying to throw hard instead of
you're finishing your pitches too, right? Like you're a pitcher guy, like you know, like if you have that freedom too in your arm, and you get that natural like deceleration pattern, I think that's where a lot of it is too with spin rate.
Yeah, the Pirates organization, Glasnow, same thing happens with him.
I was there, man.
Yeah.
I had Glasnow on the podcast, dude. It's my boy, and like that's what him and I were talking about. Is like his career took off not only with that freedom we're talking about, right, from a mechanical standpoint, but like truly identifying what's going to make him his best version of himself.
Oh yeah, I think going to Tampa Bay has been the best thing probably for his career.
Oh, totally. And it's nothing against Pittsburgh, but it's just like
no, Tampa Bay is just so far ahead of the game. It's unbelievable.
Sure.
And I think most teams, their analytical staff is going to be like 15 guys. I think they when I was talking to them, they're like 30. They're like 30 deep.
Right.
So they're looking at everything. They're trying to figure out. I mean, as a organization that doesn't spend money, they got to figure out new ways to be good, and they're really good at that.
Well, and that's a good segue into the next point, and it's that because this was what I was kind of going through coming back from like a surgery trying to get signed again. It was like, I'm kind of faced with this question of how am I going to best portray myself on paper now, right? Because back when I got drafted, like I was drafted high because I was 18, but it was like I threw hard, and it was kind of velocity was that only metric, right? So the scout, and now it's like you have all of these other metrics which they play a role in your development, play a role in like, are you going to get signed? Are you going to get drafted? And so on and so forth. So that's why I would say, to my audience a lot of the times, because I know it can get over, complex a lot of the times with data analytics, but it's like, have a baseline understanding of this stuff because it's stuff that you're going to have to optimize if you want to, kind of play professional baseball because they're looking at all this stuff.
You got to understand what your strengths are and your weaknesses are.
Yeah.
Because, most teams are 5 years, 10 years ahead of what we're going to see on like a Fangraphs or a Baseball Reference website.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Some of the stuff I saw while going through interviews, I was like, wow, this is.
Yeah, and it's not freaking public data too, because they all hide that stuff. So it's like we never know.
Yeah, there was an interview with a team a project I had to do where it was like outs above average before that was even a thing. There's
so many stats. I love stats, dude.
I love it too, yeah.
I wish my stats were better too. That's the worst part.
I have a Baseball Reference website or page now since I pitched D2, and it's pretty embarrassing.
Let's go. Hey, dude, at least you got one.
What happened with me is I had never done like a velocity developing program, and I didn't know how to do it. So I came to this D2 and
ebook.
Yeah. I came to this D2 and they're like, here we go, we're going to increase velocity. And I went from like a mid 80s to like topping out at 87 to topping out at 80. And then
After your velocity program?
Yeah.
Why?
It's because I ended up hurting my shoulder because I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah. You just didn't build up the tolerance yet and you just got jumped right into it?
No, well, it was like, all right, go do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know how to do this. I've never done this before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and, there's so many horror stories like that.
Yeah, and so I built my way back up to mid 80s, and by that summer, I had a partial tear in my UCL. So I
Sure.
had to sit out for 6 months. Came back from that, 87 again, partial tear again, right in January. So, and I pitched with it, and it was like low 80s by then, and I couldn't locate anything.
That's
so
the worst,
you go on my Baseball Reference website, my my first year, my ERA is 0, but my like walks per 9 is like 12 because I just try to throw the piss out of the ball because I was throwing 80.
Effectively wild, man.
Oh yeah. And then my second year, the walks caught up to me in my 4 appearances, and it wasn't
Dude,
pretty.
I mean, that's the thing too, man. Like, I mean, I speak from personal experience. Injuries are the worst.
Yeah,
Injuries are the worst.
I never experienced an arm injury until 2 years ago, and they kept compounding on each other.
Yeah. Oh man, that's the worst. Well, hey, I want to be respectful of your time, dude. Tell my audience where they can find you as far as social media platforms.
So you can find me on Twitter at JMASCHINO _56. The J and the M are capitalized. And I think that's basically where I throw all my stuff. And that's kind of just my repository. I got some of the spin videos. I try to break down some pitchers, try to show some different kind of sliders, fastballs, and why they kind of play that way. So that's kind of where I throw everything up on.
Yeah, dude. I mean, shoot, good stuff, man. Again, I just want to echo my thank you from earlier. Thank you for helping me out too and all that, because like there's so many questions to be answered, right? Like, well, hey, this is what my chart says. What does it mean, right? And it's like, I have those questions every day because there's like a new thing that comes up, right? Like we were talking about the cutter, we were talking about like the slider, and just trying to find like those ideal metrics that are gonna, best equip you to freaking get those stupid dudes in the box out.
For sure.
Thanks for all that. Thanks for all the help in that category, dude. But I'll sign you off the air, man. Thanks for your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.